My name's Charles Massy. I'm a farmer down here on the Monero, but currently finishing a PhD at ANU in the Fenner School, Research School for Environment and Society. And I'm looking at innovative agriculturalists and change. I guess the farmers, men and women that I've been looking at, what I call transformative agriculturalists, and by that I mean that they've made a complete change in their mind and their approach to how they go about agriculture from a previous practice. What's been really interesting is, and that's been one of my key questions, is what made them change? And one of the surprising results is that in over 60% of the cases, and I interviewed over 80 people across Australia, in over 60% of the cases it was some sort of major life shock that, if you like, cracked open their mind and made them really start to hunt around for doing something differently. And in the remaining cases, 35 to 40%, it was similar, but it was delayed. It was more gradual, but the same effect, that they ended up with this disquiet, this disequilibrium that, if you like, got them thinking that there must be a better way. How do I go about it? And that set them on the path to finding information too. So I interviewed 80 farmers right across Australia. I tried to, in southern Australia, I tried to look at the sort of agro-climatic zones, and I looked at 12 different approaches to it, whether it was grazing or cropping or agroforestry, that sort of thing. So what I found was that the farmers, if you like, have almost done a mental flip in their mind from what you would call, and historians call it, a sort of mechanical metaphor, the way they think, over to an ecological or an organic. And with that goes remarkable change in practices. And a lot of it comes down to generating healthy soils that don't degrade and wash but absorb moisture, and you've got more grass, ground cover, and healthier animals and livestock and healthier crops. It's interesting in any field, and particularly in agriculture, if you do something different, you usually you stick your head up against the parapet, above the parapet. In agriculture, the dominant way we conduct agriculture is what's called industrial agriculture, and so a lot of chemical, a lot of fossil fuel, big machines, a lot of monocultures. And that dominant, if you like, the dominant paradigm, the dominant practice is driven by the biggest companies in the world, all the big multinationals. Most of the big multinationals in chemicals, petrochemicals, fertilisers, seeds, machinery and so on. And if you start doing something that's going to disempower them or take away their business, it's the way power works in society, they're not going to like that. And so a lot of these farmers who've turned their back, if you like, on the traditional ways and the industrial ways, there's been opposition, some overt, some more subtle, but it's there. And that's what happens in society if you take on the big boys, the big league. Agriculture has to start nearly doubling its food production to meet this increasing demand. And what we're doing isn't sustainable. It's the old saying that Einstein and others have said, that today's thinking that's created today's problem isn't going to solve tomorrow's issues. So we have to have a new way of thinking, and what's emerging is this transformative agriculture does seem to provide a way of producing food commercially without a lot of the destructive impacts. When I talk about transformative agriculture, I was looking at 10 or 11 different what I call case studies, but if I was asked, and some of them were in agroforestry or growing shrubs or whatever, the two that really stand out for me because they apply so broadly and are so important and fundamental to the whole thing, bearing in mind that having healthy soil underpins all agriculture. But the two cases that stand out is what I call holistic grazing management, and that's based on the African savannas, the big herds that move through in big numbers but don't stay long and come back about 6 months later or whatever it is. And that's been adapted. It came out of Africa. It's practiced now widely, well, not widely, but it's practiced by an increasing number of farmers in Australia, Africa, North and South America. And it's transforming landscapes because farmers, just by adapting management, putting mobs into big herds, are improving their soil by resting the plants after a quick graze, etc. And the second part of that is that the big breakthrough in cropping in Australia, what's called pasture cropping, they're using animals through their cropping landscapes and grazing the crops to use the animal energy and the recycled nutrients to replace a lot of their fossil fuel and chemicals. Pasture cropping, you'd probably have to say, is a world breakthrough. I mean, and there's people in Western Australia, for example, growing really good wheat crops off 6 inches of rain. Now, the application of that worldwide, especially in a drying climate and in marginal countries, is just huge. And if you can start putting animals through a landscape and have as an excellent byproduct good crops, it's starting to say, you know, we can feed the world in the future without harming the earth that we're trying to grow the food and the crops off. I happen to think it's fundamentally important, even to the extent to the survival of our species and the planet. Because at the moment, we're racing towards a sort of multiple compounding effects that point towards disaster. We're running out of oil, we're running out of key nutrients with which to grow food, and we're going to end up with another conservative 2 billion more people by 2050. We're running out of land because of urbanisation and more land degradation. We're running out of water, and so on and so on. And current agricultural practices based on chemicals and fuel, etc., aren't sustainable, we know that. It's slowly poisoning the land and the soil and that sort of thing, and the waters. And what these transformative farmers, agriculturalists have shown is that we can grow food in a sustainable way with a lot less use of those scarce resources and with a lot less damage. And so I think they're signposting a pathway how we can conduct a sustainable future.